very good evening to all our viewers. This is News First, where people come first. And welcome to tonight's edition of Primetime News, coming to you live from our Newsfirst studios in Colombo. I'm Arundhati Mudanayaka. Let's start off with a look at the stories making headlines this evening.
Fuel prices increased, fuel shipment delayed, fuel queues worsen. Will distribute fuel properly, says IOC. Requests 50 filling stations in the country. Cabinet paper to transfer government filling stations to international companies to be presented tomorrow. Food prices to increase with the fuel price hike. Price of a packet of rice increased. Amendments to bus fares and three-wheeler fares. Schools in urban areas including Colombo closed until 1st of July. Schools in rural areas to remain open. Calling of state sector employees to work is limited until further notice. US State Department representatives arrive in the country. Sri Lanka requests assistance to solve the economic crisis.
And now the stories in detail. Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara has said fuel will be sold by issuing tokens to those in queues. He said this will be done with the army and the police. The minister apologized to the people for the failure to import fuel shipments on time.
I wish to express my regret to the President, Prime Minister, the Cabinet and the Government. We have payments of $326 million due from the Bank of Ceylon to the supplier for the fuel shipments we have imported since November. We have to pay them about $371 or $372 million through People's Bank as well. We called for bids when we advertised for tenders, but no one had submitted bids. Suppliers are not willing to deliver shipments if we don't make payments beforehand. We had to pay about $550 million, but we couldn't find around $130 million. When we already owe those suppliers around $735 million, it is difficult to purchase more shipments from that. Since our ratings were downgraded, suppliers have informed us that they are not willing to accept letters of credit issued by these banks. They have left some agreements. We are holding talks with other governments. We have received a favorable response through some diplomatic missions. We will have to face challenges for about a year until we can manage our expenses properly. We can't pay $550 or $600 million in the coming months. We must reduce spending from about $650 million to $350 million.
ඉදිරි කාලෙදී වුණා. ඒ නිසා අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම අපි අපේ පරිභෝජනය 650 ඉඳලා 350ට ඩොලර් මිලියන ප්‍රමාණයට අඩු කළ යුතුයි.
It's been 42 days since Kanchana Wijesekara was appointed as Sri Lanka's Minister of Power and Energy. Upon taking office, the minister was quick to say he would resolve the fuel crisis affecting the country. The minister went on to reveal days on which fuel shipments will arrive.
We expect a petrol cargo to arrive on the 23rd. On the 24th, we are expecting a diesel cargo. We released 2,800 litres of diesel last week, but that was increased up to 6,000 litres yesterday.
Fuel shipments did not arrive on time as claimed by the minister, leaving people in queues for days. Today, uncertainty prevails over when the next fuel stocks would reach the country. Now people are being asked not to stand in queues at filling stations. But for many weeks, drivers have spent their nights in these queues, waiting for the fuel stocks to arrive. The fuel shortage has affected many sectors of Sri Lanka, from transport to education. Who created this situation in the country? Who caused Sri Lanka's foreign reserves to drop from $8 billion to absolutely nothing in 3 years? Do the people need an energy minister to tell them not to join these queues?
Let's take a look at some of other views expressed by Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara at today's media briefing.
Let's assume between 750 and 850 people are in queues to purchase fuel. We will issue a token to all of them. 6,600 tokens will be issued to them, and we will obtain their phone numbers as they do so. Tokens will be unique to each and every fuel station and cannot be changed after being issued. We will not be able to issue tokens to all filling stations until the next fuel shipment arrives within the next several days. Until the shipment reaches the country, we can sell 30 litres of fuel to each vehicle. We are hoping to issue fuel to the first 220 vehicles in the queue through this method until the situation is controlled.
The minister spoke about the method of revising prices.
We cannot change the prices every day. It happens in other countries. There were proposals we could have implemented even after 2 weeks, but the IOC proposed we do it in 2 weeks. We must do it every 2 weeks. A litre of kerosene is 87 rupees. Therefore, we are planning to revise kerosene prices soon. We are selling it for 87 rupees, but it costs 421 rupees.
Has Lanka IOC requested control of more filling stations?
The IOC has requested us to hand over 50 filling stations and several government filling stations so that they can distribute fuel through them. In exchange, we have asked them to increase fuel imports and supply. They are importing about 10 to 15% of the requirement. We are planning to present a cabinet paper tomorrow to hand over 200 or 300 filling stations out of the 1,190 in the country to companies like IOC to distribute fuel. This is under one condition. We are handing them the fuel stations for 6 months to 1 year so that we can import fuel through a credit line.
ඔවුන්ගේ සමාගම් වලින් ණය ක්‍රමයක් යටතේ ඉන්ධන මේ රටට ආනයනය කිරීමේ පසුබිම යටතේ.
Why isn't the government trying to import fuel from Russia?
නෑ උනන්දු වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියන එක වැරදි මතයක්.
To say that we are not trying is a wrong conception. There are diplomatic channels we need to follow. The foreign minister and the ambassador have tried to do this. We have written to them. The president had made continuous requests. 2 ministers will go to Russia tomorrow to take part in talks.
Podujana Peramuna parliamentarian Virasumana Virasinghe says a mere apology by the minister will not solve the problems of the people.
What solutions do they have to solve the energy crisis in the country? I don't see any solutions for that. They were able to import fuel under the Indian credit line, but when the credit line was over, they don't have any way to import fuel. Our energy minister cannot even tell us exactly when the next fuel shipment will arrive. A mere apology by the energy minister is not the answer to this crisis. He has failed to answer the call of the nation during this crisis. For the past few months, we have been repeatedly telling them not to solely rely on India when importing fuel. 2 months ago, we presented a proposal to import fuel from Russia. If they really want to implement this proposal, they had the chance to do it. We could have mitigated this crisis to some extent if they had implemented this proposal to import fuel from Russia. The reason why we can't import fuel for our Petco filling stations is a lack of dollars in our foreign reserves. But then what about the IOC? Don't they have enough dollars to import fuel? If they really want to mitigate this crisis, they could have brought down enough stocks of fuel and distributed it through their filling stations. But they just don't want to find a solution to this crisis. They want this to continue and to perhaps aggravate further. This is the reason why the vessel that was supposed to arrive in the country on the 23rd had to go back. When this situation aggravates, the government will allow some private entity to take over the responsibility of distributing fuel. They will sell out the remaining Petco filling stations as well. The appointment of Ranil Wickremesinghe and Dhammika Pereira are 2 similar moves taken by them to strengthen their cause. They did not make these appointments to solve the prevailing crisis in the country.
ධම්මික පෙරේරා මහත්තයාගේ ආගමනයත් එක හා සමාන ආගමන දෙකක් ඒ කඳවුර තවත් ශක්තිමත් කරමින් යන ගමනක් මිසක් මේ රටේ මූලික ප්‍රශ්න වලට නිවැරදි උත්තර දෙන ආගමනයක් නොවේ කියන කාරණාව තමයි විශ්වාස කරන්නේ.
The Sunday Times has reported that Indian officials have pushed for quick implementation of Indian projects during their visit to Sri Lanka.
The Sunday Times reported that Indian officials who arrived in Sri Lanka this week have pushed for quick implementation of Indian projects. The projects include the Mana Punarin wind power plants granted to Adani Green Energy Limited, West Container Terminal in which Adani Ports has a controlling stake, and the proposed joint venture solar power plant in Sampur. Sources had told the newspaper that more credit will be obtained from India to buy fuel.
A high-level delegation representing the U.S. Department of the Treasury and the U.S. Department of State arrived in Sri Lanka. They will remain in the country until the 29th of June.
4 officials representing the US Department of Treasury and the US Department of State arrived in the country today. The officials include Ambassador Kelly Kiesling, Deputy Assistant Secretary of US Department of State Robert Caproth, Deputy Assistant Secretary to the US Treasury John McDaniel, and Catherine Reynolds, the Deputy Director for South Asia to the US Treasury. They will be meeting the President, Prime Minister, Central Bank Governor and the Treasury Secretary. The officials are visiting Sri Lanka against the backdrop of Sri Lankan Ambassador Mahinda Samarasinghe's meeting with US President Joe Biden and US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. He had briefed them on the economic challenges faced by Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka has great leaders and visionaries who wanted to make use of every raindrop before they flowed into the sea. Why do we ignore the sea that is 8 times our landmass? The Sea of Sri Lanka is a potential target for any global superpower. This is our Sea of Sri Lanka.
The Sea of Sri Lanka.
Well, time for a short commercial break. Stay with News First. We will be right back.
මොකද මහත්තයා මේ
නෑ මේ ගෙදර සිංක් එකේ
අයි මහත්තයා ස්ලෝන් නෙවෙයිද දැම්මේ
හදිස්සියට බාලා පයිප්පයක් දැම්මේ නැද්ද මුදලාලි ඊයේ පෙරේදා කඩේ රිපෙයාර් කරන්න ගෙනාපු ගම් චුට්ටක්
මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට හොඳම විසඳුම ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටක් හැබැයි ඉක්මනින් දාගන්න ස්ලෝන් පයිප්පයක්
ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටා හැම ගෙදරකම සිටිය යුතු ජලනල කාර්මිකයා දැන් ළඟම ග්‍රොසරියෙන් මිලදී ගන්න
Eva Trusted Confidence now has a fresh new feel. For the first time in Sri Lanka, Eva unveiled an antibacterial layer to minimize microbial growth and control odor, helping you stay fresher throughout the day. Now with maximum absorption. Available in cotton feel wings for maximum comfort and Drytex wings for maximum dryness. Eva, leading with confidence.
Welcome back. Here with News First. Details have come to light on corrupt deals involved in the importation of anti-rabies vaccines to Sri Lanka. On Action TV tonight, we take a closer look at this story.
Rabies is a viral disease that can be prevented by vaccinating animals at the right time. However, Asian, African and Latin American countries have shown slow progress in tackling this disease. In Sri Lanka, the responsibility of preventing the spread of this disease is shifted between the health ministry and the veterinary authorities. This failed approach has created a demand for anti-rabies vaccines in the country. At present, anti-rabies vaccines are among the medicines in short supply due to Sri Lanka's foreign exchange crisis. But this shortage was created due to the corrupt actions of a few. In July 2020, the cabinet had granted approval to award a tender to import 4.5 million doses of anti-rabies vaccines from a supplier at a cost of more than 1 billion rupees. A supplier who placed a bid that was less than 20 billion rupees had then challenged the cabinet decision at the Presidential Appeal Board. But as the COVID-19 pandemic took center stage, the appeal was disregarded. This supplier had failed to supply 4.5 billion vaccine doses at the due date on May 2021. In August last year, the Health Ministry awarded a tender to a supplier who placed the lowest bid to supply 2.7 million vaccine doses. But the State Pharmaceuticals Corporation did not open letters of credit to import these vaccines. On June 3rd this year, the State Pharmaceuticals Corporation called for tenders to supply 500,000 anti-rabies vaccine doses as an emergency. The deadline to submit tenders was at 2:30 p.m. on Monday, just 2 days after tenders were called. Shockingly, the tender was awarded to the second and third lowest bidders, while excluding the lowest bidder without providing a reason. The decision to select the 2 suppliers is a planned attempt to avoid obtaining the approval of the ministry. One of the two chosen suppliers was the company that failed to supply the vaccines on time by May 2021. The cost of overlooking the lowest bidder is about 25 million rupees. Regardless of what committee decides on purchasing medicines for Sri Lanka's health service, it is the State Pharmaceuticals Corporation which is the only arm that handles these matters directly. While many political appointments have been made to the post of chairman to this agency, other top positions continue to be held by the same officials for a long time. Shouldn't an investigation be conducted to find out whether it is these dormant officials who are responsible for making a fortune out of importing anti-rabies vaccines? Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, this is over to you.
The central bank printed 43 billion rupees on Friday after a treasury bill auction went undersubscribed this week.
The central bank had issued treasury bills on Wednesday to raise 93 billion rupees. However, only 30.7 billion rupees of bills had been sold that day. A day after the treasury bill auction, the central bank had printed 43 billion rupees. The central bank has printed 114.86 billion rupees so far.
The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and Lanka Indian Oil Corporation increased fuel prices today.
The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation has increased the cost of octane 92 petrol up to 470 rupees and 95 octane petrol up to 550 rupees. The cost of auto diesel is 460 rupees, while the cost of super diesel has been increased to 520 rupees. Lanka IOC also announced that it has increased fuel prices in line with the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation's rates.
The Public Administration Ministry has increased the validity of its circular allowing public officers to work from home.
In a circular, the Public Administration Ministry has instructed to allow public officers to work from home whenever possible. Heads of state institutions that deal directly with the people have been instructed to call officers to work only under the supervision of ministry secretaries or chief secretaries of provinces. The circular stresses that officers should be restricted to ensure fuel is used efficiently and that all meetings should be held online.
The fuel price hike has had a ripple effect on other sectors as well.
The Canteen Owners Association says the cost of food, including rice, will be increased by 10% from today.
We expect canteen owners will increase the cost of meal by 10%. We need to increase prices to sustain operations.
Private bus owners have also requested to increase fares. All Ceylon Private Bus Owners Association General Secretary Anjana Priyanjit said bus fares must go up by about 35%.
Just as fuel prices are increased in one night, we believe bus fares must be increased tomorrow. The minimum bus fare, which was 32 rupees, should be increased up to 40 rupees. If fares can't be increased, sell diesel to us under the old rate in the coming 4 days, or else calculate our expenses and announce the new fare by Monday. They must implement the pricing formula tomorrow, otherwise we will stop running buses by Tuesday.
Sri Lanka Railways says it has requested to increase train fares by about 50%. The Three-Wheel Owners Association says the fare for the second kilometre will be increased by 10 rupees.
Don't increase the fare for the first kilometre more than 100 rupees. Increase the fare for the second kilometre up to 90 rupees. Otherwise we can't do our job. But don't increase fares as you wish when petrol prices go up.
Queues were seen at filling stations even after fuel prices were increased this morning.
දෙකමාරක් මේ අදරැත් ඉන්න ඕනේ තෙල් එනවා කියනවා නෑ කියනවා මේ හරි වේදනාවකින් ඉන්නේ ගෙදරත් ප්‍රශ්න ගෙදර ගියාම ගෙදරත් සෑම අඩුපාඩුවක්ම තියෙන ඒවත් බලන්න ඕනේ ඇමති ගොල්ලන්ට අහන් ඉන්න මේවත් පෙන්නන්න ඒ මිනිස්සුන් නම් තියෙනවා කණ්ඩ බොණ්ඩ තෙල් තියෙනවා
A quarrel broke out between two people at the Godakavela filling station in Ratnapura yesterday. Tensions arose at the Ohuna filling station last night after people complained that workers were hoarding stocks. Inquiries had revealed that the filling station did not have fuel. A tense situation arose at the Kantale filling station yesterday after one person had jumped the queue. The police and the army intervened to control the situation. Diesel stocks that reached the Vavina filling station in Ambara last night were sold this morning. Drivers opposed the decision to sell last night's stocks under the new rates. The filling station then sold fuel at the previous price. Fuel was sold under the old rates at the IOC filling station in Nindavu, Sipetco filling station in Madurankelia and the Batiklo filling station. People have been waiting in queues for more than 3 days at the filling station in Kurunegala. A rice dansal was organised for people waiting in queue at the Korala Ima filling station in Horana last night. Another rice dansal was organised by the owner of the filling station in Nambapana Ingiriya for people in line. Another dansal was organised by the youth of Hambantota to distribute sego porridge to those in queue.
The Education Ministry says schools in Colombo and other cities will be closed until the 1st of July.
In a statement, the Education Ministry said rural or village schools will remain open next week. If students or children in these schools face transportation issues, schools can be kept open on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. The ministry said GCE ordinary level term examinations that have been scheduled to be held on the 27th of June should be postponed for 2 weeks.
News First with the people.
Time for a short commercial break. Stay with News First. We will be right back.
මොකද මහත්තයා මේ?
නෑ මේ ගෙදර සිංක් එකේ
අයි මහත්තයා ස්ලෝන් නෙවෙයිද දැම්මේ?
හදිස්සියට බාල පයිප් එකක් දැම්මේ. නැද්ද මුදලාලි ඊයේ පෙරේදා කඩේ රිපෙයාර් කරන්න ගෙනාපු ගම් චුට්ටා.
මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට හොඳම විසඳුම ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටා. හැබැයි ඉක්මනින් දාගන්න ස්ලෝන් පයිප් එකක්.
Ceylon ගම් චුට්ටා හැම ගෙදරකම සිටිය යුතු ජලනල කාර්මිකයා දැන් රංගම ග්‍රොසරියෙන් මිලදී ගන්න.
Welcome back to the news. A teacher has been remanded for threatening and sexually abusing some female students in Mullaitivu. Police said the student, who is believed to be part of this operation, has also been remanded until the end of this month.
A 28-year-old maths teacher had been arrested in Mullaitivu for sexually abusing some schoolgirls who attended his classes. Investigations have found that the teacher had created an environment allowing students attending his classes to enter into romantic relationships. The teacher had then obtained photographs of the schoolgirls through 5 boys and used it to blackmail and abuse them sexually. Police had arrested 5 boys over their involvement after one of the girls had filed a complaint against the incident. The teacher had then surrendered to the police through his lawyer. According to the police, the teacher and 1 student have been remanded until the 30th of this month, while 4 other students have been granted bail. Mullaitivu police are conducting further investigations. Hospital sources say the teacher has been involved in abusing students for about 3 years.
People in several areas took to the streets against the rising cost of living this evening. Senthasana Naika joins us from the Liberty Roundabout, where protests dubbed Kitchen Lament took place today.
I'm reporting to you from the Liberty Roundabouts. It's a Sunday and a group of people are here expressing their dissatisfaction against the government and the president. This protest has been happening for the past several weeks. This is called the Kitchen Lament. They are bringing their kitchen utensils and they're making noise. They're citing how the economic crisis has affected the kitchens of Sri Lanka. They're saying a country with such a potential is now facing an economic crisis and its people are suffering, and according to them, the leaders of this country are entirely responsible.
life is going hell day by day. So people have been really frustrated for a very long time, but there seems to be no changes.
We need capable people to run our country, and we do have capable people, but they're not given a chance because we are appointing people who really can't do it, and we can see we've had no results whatsoever. That's why we're here today. You know, we could be at home in the comfort of our homes, but we're here to show our dissatisfaction and our disappointment. Our country has really let us down.
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa visited protesters who have been remanded at the Magazine prison in Colombo.
7 activists including Ratindu Senaratna, alias Ratta, Dhammika Munasinghe, Lahiru Veerasekara, Venerable Ratkarawe Jinaratna Thero, Jagat Manuwarana, Eranga Gunasekara and Jehan Appuhami have been remanded until the 1st of July. The opposition leader visited them in prison today.
May 9 වෙනිදා කළු මේ දිනයක් බවට පත් කරේ රාජපක්ෂ ත්‍රස්තවාදය, රාජපක්ෂ ම්ලේච්ඡත්වය, රාජපක්ෂ ප්‍රචණ්ඩත්වය.
Groups that carried out barbaric acts of terrorism and violence backed by Rajapaksas tried to defeat the purpose of the people's struggle. But today, the objectives of the struggle continue to live on. The Rajapaksas who carried out these murders are roaming free. No inquiry has been carried out into them, but the Rajapaksa government has remanded most of the people who fight to make ends meet as they attempt to defeat the people's objectives. We must not allow this to continue any further.
අද රාජපක්ෂ ම්ලේච්ඡ ආණ්ඩුව හිරබාරයට අරගෙන සිරගත කරලා ජනතා අරමුණු පරාජය කරන ම්ලේච්ඡ පාලනයක් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා. තවදුරටත් මෙය ඉදිරියට ඉෂ්ට කරන්නට අපි ඊට තබන්නේ නැහැ.
A protest was held near the Open University in Navala this afternoon demanding the release of the 7 activists.
If the rulers of this country think they can suppress the student movement and the protest movement by arresting us, we have a message for them. Although we are protesting in this manner today, the next time things will be different.
The government the relief program launched to ease the burden on the many families that have been severely affected by the economic crisis took place today as well.
The Government Relief Program, which is covering almost every part of the country, distributed dry ration packages to selected families living in Sandaravala, a remote village in Baddegama. At the same time, several families living in Hammantota and Suryawaba, rendered helpless by the economic crisis, were given relief packages. Economically challenged families from Milnanga, a remote area in Patha Dumbara, were also recipients of the packages by Gammedda. A similar program took place in Kuruvita Ratnapura in the Sabaragamuwa province. Families affected by the worsening economic crisis in Aulegama in Variapola were given dry ration packages by Gammedda as well.
And in news overseas, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said Russia will send short-range missiles to Belarus in the coming months.
Russia is to supply ballistic and cruise missiles that can even hold nuclear power to Belarus. The missiles can travel up to 500 kilometers. Tensions between Russia and the West have escalated following President Putin's decision to invade Ukraine on 24 February. Putin had said Russia would help to modify Belarusian Su-25 warplanes so that they could carry nuclear weapons.
And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of Primetime News. Thank you very much for joining us. This is News First with the People. Good night.
Kidney diseases have plagued the villages of Madukare for many years. For 335 families that once relied on impure water,
there's some hope. A water purification project by Gammadda. Gammadda, for the people, by the people.
TV1 රස්විහිදෙන ජීවිතේ.
Ayubowan, and a very good evening to all our viewers here on TV1. I'm Dr. Dilshan Fernando, and this is your weekly dose of wellness here on Healthline.